Aronok, can I tell you a joke?
Sure, what's the joke?
We were just telling Aronok dad jokes in their server earlier today.
Oh, really? I'm gonna tell a joke right now. Okay, so three asexuals and an aromantic walk into a bar,
Okay.
and the bartender says, "Hello, what can I get you?" And they respond, "We're recording episode 3 of Video Gems." Hello.
Smooth. That is a good intro.
Hello. And welcome to Video Gems, the podcast where we gaze into the abyss of knowledge, and sometimes it gazes back. I am your host, Darkfry, joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Harry from Video Games Are Bad, and Aronok, and with a very special guest, once again, joining us. Today, it's the spooky, scary feminist. David, introduce yourself.
Hi, I am David J. Bradley. I am, in fact, the spooky, scary feminist. What Darkfry is referring to, for the people who aren't watching, is that my t-shirt has the word feminist written on it in kind of a blood-dripping font. To give the full context, it's got Mothra and it says feminist icon. But from where it is, it just says feminist.
I think it's such a funny descriptor to use, especially because, for those not watching, I look like the scariest god bitch you've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's a scary feminist day, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a person what makes videos on that there YouTube.
Person that makes videos on that there YouTube. That's what we all are, actually. And it's very, and it's spooky. So, David, what sort of videos do you be making?
Video essay stuff, which is why I'm on this podcast.
Damn.
The topics vary on what I do. You know, I do probably my most popular videos are my asexual ones, which for the people viewing can see the flag. But I also do a lot of media analysis and like TV, films, theatre, or in this case, a newspaper comic strip.
Wow. I just gotta say, your asexual, your videos about asexuality, more accurately, that's how I found you. And
that's how most people found me, I think.
Yeah, and I belong in that majority. And I just want to say I really appreciate those videos, because there's not much out there.
There really isn't.
Yeah, and it was
of good
right
quality anyway.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this when I was on Video Gems version 1.0.
Yeah.
But basically, that was the reason I started making Ace videos. Was while there were some Ace videos on YouTube, they were mostly like vlogs and things, which like perfectly fine, just not my kind of thing. And I was like, I wanted to see something more educational about it, more that got into kind of the nuances, and so I thought I could do that.
Yeah, and like. So, and it was around the time where I was like, you know, discovering it for myself and learning about it and seeing how I relate to the stuff you're saying, how what you're saying fits to me and stuff like that. And like, I feel that if I didn't see content like yours, I would have a much harder time sort of it's hard to put into words, like to
understand and express yourself.
Yeah, like to find the words for this experience and these feelings.
What you're talking
it's
about
very
is
helpful when when someone has the language.
Yeah.
That you
yeah.
like when you go,
yeah.
That's it. That's my.
What you're talking about is queer linguistic relativity.
Yeah.
Something that I did a big giant video on. And I bring that up because like David and I have a lot of influence on each other's videos.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how often we talk about that publicly, but like every script we read to each other.
We read each other. We show each other like bits of the edit as we do it.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
a lot of influence.
And I will say, as a thing I've said it in a few places, but I don't think I've said very publicly before. But I used to be quite hesitant about showing my stuff to people before it was done, and Aranok was a very big help in me actually starting to trust that it's a good idea to show your work to people beforehand. And so I always want to thank Aranok for that.
Yeah. So this is once again a topic that we are going to hammer until it reaches hell.
Yeah. Get
So-
help from people.
Get heckin' feedback,
Do it.
Yeah.
you dang fools.
Again,
No, but your art.
a specific twist I will put on that is it's always good to get it from at least two people, and you want one person who is familiar with the subject, if you can get it, and one person who has no idea about
Yes.
anything to do with the subject
Yes.
at all.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
if you've got
being-
someone who is familiar with the subject, then they can chime in and go, "Oh, there's this thing, there's this, that. You know, you could change this bit and make it all that." Whereas the person who knows nothing about it, they are there to be the gauge for: will this video make sense to someone who has never seen this movie or played this game or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, like being clever about who you ask to assist you helps a lot. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think David and I always give feedback to each other because we're on a similar wavelength as artists, and so we're coming at it from that standpoint of understanding the process, understanding what makes a work function and tick and structure and delivery and
Yeah,
those
and
types of feedback
We
that-
both like to play around with our structures and things as well.
yeah.
So
and there's been times
we're always
where,
a good sounding boards for that kind of thing.
and there's been times where I've definitely encouraged you to take weirder structures of things.
Yes.
Like I remember we were talking about the cabaret video, and you came to me with the idea of using the framing device of the Twilight Zone episode, which I want to pick 100% David's idea, like that.
Yeah.
But you were like, I'm not sure if like that'll make. I'm like, no, do it. It'll work really well. Do it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's excellent.
And
I want to.
I was very pleased with how that one came out. So.
It's such a
Sweet.
good video.
That makes me very happy to hear. I want to give a quick shout out to I Am Error, who is basically my co-writer. She
She'll be on
gives
the
me
show at some point.
she gives me so much feedback and helps out so much. She is basically my co-writer. That's how much she helps me out with the scripts and why they turn out so good. So yeah, get heckin' feedback.
It really helps, and just like collaborating with people, it makes you a stronger artist in general, I think.
Yeah.
Like since I started showing my work to people like Aranok, and I show it to like Adequate Emily, and sometimes I let Pim read some of them sometimes. On this Peanuts one that I did, Kiki from Transparency was a very big help because she knows a lot about Peanuts as well. So it's just like, again, finding the right people to ask is always a good idea.
Yeah.
I could be the I watched your video, David, and I knew nothing about Peanuts before going in. I knew nothing.
Yeah, same.
Like jack shit. Haven't seen a single strip before. And it still hit home. It's still
Thank you.
everything was crystal clear and very well explained, and could instantly see the appeal and could understand exactly what you were talking about. It was very well done.
Thank you.
For
We
the
probably should
uninitiated.
explain, for the people who don't know what video we're talking about.
Yeah.
I just, at the time of recording less than a week ago, put out a video called The Dark Truth of Peanuts, which is a almost 2-hour long first 2/3 basically are a pretend theory video saying that Peanuts is a purgatory and a lot of other things. And then it becomes, there's an interlude where I talk to a plastic toy of Lucy, and then it becomes more like a traditional video essay for the last third.
But I think
Yes.
it's worth touching on, like, because even well before you started working on Peanuts at all, like you and I had talked about our frustrations with the theory side of
Yeah.
YouTube videos.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, but the video itself, so
So this was
I-
planned from the outset, right, David? You went in being like, gonna make a 2/3 of a theory video and switch it around in the last minute.
I don't remember.
It was definitely early on.
Yeah, it was early. I don't remember the exact moment when it became a theory video, but the basic structure of that it was going to be about, like, kind of the more depressing side of Peanut stuff early on, and then get to the hopeful note towards the end.
Right.
That was there right from the outset, because in a way I wanted this video to be kind of a spiritual sequel to my video YouTube is Absurd, where it's like it touches on the same kind of absurdist, like, finding the struggle for meaning is the meaning itself.
I screamed this out loud while watching so while watching this, I screamed out loud, "It's our old pal absurdism again."
Which basically the video began in my head when, as a joke tweet, I put out a tweet saying, "One must imagine Charlie Brown happy." And then I sat and thought about it for a second and thought, I've just had a terrible idea. And 9 months later, I have a video.
That's when I think you messaged me about it. Because it was early when you first had the idea. And then, like, as I said, for a long time, we've mocked certain theory-style channels for the lack of ability to engage with what a text is saying, while obsessed with what, like, the lore of a text is as a problem to solve.
So, David, this video has been in the oven for 9 months. 9 heckin' months. This video is your baby.
As long as a human child.
Yeah. This video is your baby, David. So tell us about that process. Tell us about the evolution,
Well, but basically, the first couple of months were reading through the entire newspaper strip and watching through all the animations, which there is a lot of both.
You tortured me with some of the bad ones.
In terms of the strip, there are almost 18,000 individual daily newspaper strips.
My goodness.
Covering about 50 years, and then the animations have been going since 1965, and they're still going. So I had a lot of stuff to watch, and yes, at one point, Aronok watched some with me, and one of them was so bad we both had a sensory overload at the same time while watching it.
Like, I had a full-on migraine. Like, it was... what was that was Peanuts by Schultz, right?
Yeah, Peanuts by Schultz, which I found out after we'd watched it that there are 2 different dubs of that show in English, because it was originally made in French, and the one we watched was the dub made by English-speaking actors who live in France, who are all really bad, and it's really badly mixed, and like the episode we watched, it had like the sound of a baby crying at one point, and it was so horrible.
I think the major issues with it is the audio mixing is off. There's a weird amount of, like, strange music choices and background sounds that are just the most irritating repeating sound.
But then I listened to I saw a couple of clips of the American made dub of it, and it was so much better. Like,
interesting.
The actors were much better chosen. This music was down at a lower level and wasn't as loud and annoying. But the show was still bad. But it wasn't quite as painful.
Well, and I wonder how much was lost with the translation, because timing's so important to comedy. Yeah. And if you translate comedy without translating the timing, because the timing will change with the delivery, rough.
Yeah. But
we watched a good Peanuts.
Yeah, we watched the Peanuts movie from 2015, which is fantastic. It's one of my favorites.
My knowledge of Peanuts is exclusively David-based.
So basically, I'm the only person in this call who has actually knows stuff about Peanuts. Beyond what you
basically
just like
David consumed everything, and we all just consumed the David info dump.
Yeah. I watched The Big Stuffed Dog. I watched Snoopy's Musical on Ice.
Have you?
Yeah.
The number of
my favorite jokes in the video.
screenshots you sent over that 3-month reading period.
And probably plenty more while I was editing the video.
Oh,
'cause
absolutely.
I kept refinding fun strips. Because throughout this whole, because then it took me a couple months to write it. Because again, it was a 20,000 word video and a lot of very specific points where I had to find the right dates and in fact, I'm not going to test. When I was first reading through the script to them, there were quite a few points when I was just going and then this happens on insert date here, and then because I couldn't be bothered to find what the date was until after I was done.
It was literally like David's full in delivering mode, and it'd be and on insert date here, Charlie Brown would yeah.
The one's not important.
Yeah, then I finished writing it in late December and recorded it around late December, early January, and I was editing it, and then unfortunately in February my mum passed away. And that rather put a bit of a delay on it. It took me about 3 weeks to be able to do anything again.
Yeah.
And that's why the video ended up being dedicated to my mum at the start.
That's very sweet.
You
dedicated
told me you
to
were
others.
doing that, but I knew it would make me tear up.
I was very glad that I could do that on if it was going to be any video. Unfortunately, it has to be one. But if it was going to be any video, I'm glad it could be this one, because without my mum, I would not love Peanuts. I got into it because of the paperback collections that she had from when she was a kid, and I read them when I was a kid, and she read some of them to me, and it's something that we've always both loved a lot. And so, in fact, I mentioned my mum a few times in the video as being kind of my source of it, and so if it had to be any video, I'm glad it could be this one.
That's beautiful.
Sorry.
Just
It's okay, David. If you need a minute.
yeah.
I'm okay.
It's just really great how Peanuts just lasted such what a legacy. It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
they're still going.
Yeah. And you see it so you got a bunch of people to voice
Yes.
characters from
two of them are in this
from
call right
Peanuts.
now.
And and that includes Aronok and myself.
Yeah.
I did not know, David, that one of the things you had me voice was the first Peanuts strip.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Not just the first Peanut strip, but the first line in the video.
Yeah,
was you.
the first line in the video and the first Peanut strip. I did not know that.
Well, again, that first Peanut strip, the absolute classic, where Charlie Brown's just skipping down the street, and Shirley's like, "Oh, here comes good old Charlie Brown. Good old Charlie Brown. Yes, sir. Good old Charlie Brown. How I hate him."
Which is such a fascinating way to start a kid's
it's great.
comic.
And I was thinking about who can I get to voice this, and I just pictured you, Darkfry, saying that "How I hate him" line.
Yeah.
And I knew from the kind of deliveries that you do, the amount of relish you would put on that line. And it was absolutely the right choice.
I remember you messaged me when you realized that too. You were like, I have to have Darkfry read this.
Yeah.
With the screenshot of the comic.
Yeah.
Okay, so I knew I'd wanted to have you voice something in a video for a little while, because obviously we've been hanging out on be friends on Twitter and things for ages, and you've got a fun delivery with things. So,
Yeah.
And I'm glad I found the right part.
I'm very glad you did. The casting choices in general were top notch.
Yeah, it was
I
a
was so
who's
pleased.
who of
I was
cool
so pleased to get all the
YouTubers.
people I did,
Yeah.
because there were 16 cast members.
And I was really proud of the delivery on both Shermie's lines and 95472.
Yeah, 555-95472.
I'm impressed I got it right, actually.
Yeah.
Got the numbers right.
Yeah.
Was a joy to voice for your video, David. I'm very glad you had me on.
And Aronok was the only one who acted opposite themselves.
That was a weird listening back to it. I don't think the audience will maybe pick up on because I have those specific things, and I think you're the only other person that's managed to start picking up on like those tiny little intonation things that mean that no matter what voice I do, you can tell it's me.
I can tell. I can always tell it's your voice because we hang out so much, so I know what your voice sounds like.
It's sort of like the thing where if you know a voice actor's voice well enough, you'll notice when they're voicing a character, even when they're doing wildly different voices, because there's certain aspects of our voices that we can't fully divorce ourselves from perfectly, unless we're doing like drastically different vocal deliveries.
But basically, it was just like I had 3 parts left who had like one strip appearance each in the video, and I was like, I need someone who can do 3 distinctive voices. I don't know.
Yeah, Aronok. I don't know how she does it. Friggin',
vocal range caused by dysphoria.
Just okay. That's how. Good to know.
You've heard nothing until you've heard Aronok's Jordan Peterson. So
it just. I messaged her and I was like, "Hey, Aronok, can you do a Bennett Foddy impression?"
I
Just on the off
genuinely,
chance,
that was one of the most fun requests I've ever had. And I could still do it if I go listen to him for 10 seconds, which is the way that Bennett Foddy is simultaneously so not caring about the conversation while also being very invested in being superior about it. And then like he just has this specific weird combination of mismatching or contradictory energies, and you throw the accent in there. It's just a fun voice to play with.
Smug and quiet.
Smug, quiet, and relaxed. Like I think it's the relaxed part that makes it really hit in a certain way. Like I need to see the line, because when you're doing voices, the easiest way to get into a voice is have like activation lines. Like for Jordan Peterson, if I want to get into it, you know, the chaos dragon of femininity, they're coming to destroy the West.
That's so good.
For audio only listeners, no, Jordan Peterson did not just appear on the podcast.
We just got Kermit and Benzos.
You know, the solution to a benzo addiction sometimes, it was so hard, so I put myself in a coma.
It's good, but I feel like you're not breaking into tears enough.
Yeah,
like he
does that.
I don't want to take it that far because he's actually like hurting his voice sometimes when you like.
Oh yeah.
These men come to me. I like. It's so funny. One second.
I love anytime there's like a new clip of Jordan Peterson where he's in like the most dramatic looking background possible. Like it's like a black void kind of background, and he's wearing like a really sharp suit, and he's just talking the most utter nonsense you've ever heard.
No, I love when people do like YouTube. I love when people do like YouTube poop edits of those videos where they just cut clips and cut words together.
I've got the Bennett Foddy one. I don't know how good it's gonna be because I haven't practiced. So, and it's not a voice that I do enough to like have down. Whereas like Jordan Peterson, I've done enough times as a joke thing for people that like. Frustration's an essential ingredient in many of the most famous and influential designs. What would Space Invaders be like if you never had to start again? What would Myst be like if you were never stumped? A game that's completely devoid of frustration is likely to be a game without friction, without disobedience. Games that are perfectly obedient are mere software.
Oh my god.
Like, the way he just talks down to you while also sounding so bored.
What a star-studded episode
exactly.
of Video Games. You've had Jordan Peterson and Bennett Foddy. Like, what am I doing here, honestly?
No, and I think another fun one that I did, though I don't think... like Evelyn didn't end up using it, but was a Princess Peach impression. But the problem with learning how to do Princess Peach is there's like 3 different versions. Though Era really liked my version. But she ended up using a different one from I can't remember who it was. But like Princess Peach is really funny, but I think the funniest thing with it is, "Dear Mario, Luigi's a bitch." Like something about that, like that. But it's weird because there's different Peaches. Like she has one of the least consistent voices in the Mario cast because she was directed to deliver the lines differently in different games. And so there's like this really like breathy, like really in the chest version. I'm not doing it perfectly right now. It's fine. But like, and then there's the one that people think of more often, which is the newer version. But like the version for Super Mario 64 is a little bit different. It sounds a little bit more close to like almost like an mid-Atlantic accent from the 60s. And it's a little breathier. It's a little higher. Like it's, yeah. I love voices.
Yeah.
Do you
I
think
hate
Bennett
him.
Foddy just like talks like that in real life?
No idea.
When he,
Guarantee,
like
I
if there's no
guarantee-
milk or something, he's just like.
When there's
Sometimes
no milk
you
in
have
the
to
fridge,
accept milk.
It's just something you have to accept. There might be a disappointment, and you might be mad at your roommate. Carl forgot to get milk at the grocery store.
Get out of my fucking house, Bennett.
What are you doing, Carl?
I would say as well, though, Darkfry, your Bennett Folly video that you released fairly recently was very good.
It is really
Thank
good.
you.
That's why I was.
It's oh yeah, I know. But, it's really fun to see because a lot of things, and you openly say in the video, a lot of the thoughts in that video were inspired by my YouTube is Absurd video, and so it's very neat to see someone else talking about the same similar thing you've talked about, but from like a different perspective of knowledge.
Yeah. So
Because like when I talked about Bennett Foddy, I was just like kind of aesthetically and what the emotions it gives me, whereas you are like, here's the actual reason the game design works that way.
yeah, and I really wanted to be open. I really wanted to be open about that because okay, so another thing that people don't tell you about creating things, right? It's okay to steal shit. Just steal shit. Just fucking plunder and yoink and loot. Just take things.
I think it's important to specify what we mean by steal.
Yeah. I'm gonna go in and
You
order
shut the MP4, take my videos, put them on another channel. It's fine.
No,
Just kidding. It's
yeah,
not
basically-
fine. It's not
Channel,
fine.
put burn in some Russian subtitles on the bottom.
But
Yeah.
I think more essayists do need to approach things from the standpoint of, and this is coming from an academic background, you build off the ideas that came before you with citation, with sourcing. And what Darkfright does with the Bennett Foddy video very openly states that David's video on absurdity was an influence, and it builds off concepts from there. I did that like 4 or 5 different times in Queer Relativity with a number of different essayists, including our friend Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, mentioning videos is just like it's free. It's so good.
Yeah.
'Cause, like,
Yeah, but that's the thing. Is that if you've got an idea from somewhere, it's kind of the least you can do.
Yeah.
To just say if you want to know more about this, then check out this video.
And it's like
Or
obviously
even just saying-
we all sort of know each other, right? But like our audience might not know that. They might not know that like this channel exists or this other channel exists.
Exactly.
So we're just giving them more stuff to watch. It's great.
Well, and even when I disagree with someone, if I'm going to cite them, I should cite them.
Yeah.
Like, and I think, and I've been thinking about a lot with multiple different mediums, but this, I don't like. Let's call it art insecurity. It pops up a lot in the video game industry, particularly from AAA companies. Actually, Era did a good video about that. But I've also noticed it a bit with video essayists and certain types of video essayists being like, "Oh, is video essays art?" And I'm like, the fact that you even feel the need to ask that question seems kind of silly to me because, obviously, it's so. Outside of the fact that it literally came from the most video essays are a medium that originates in academia, first off, which is a thing that a lot of people seem to forget, which is, I'm sorry, if the obnoxious people that are the most obnoxious about arguing over whether or not something is art immediately adopted this medium as being art, then, I think we don't need to have that type of insecurity, and I think part of that is asserting it by using it like
a question of, is something art? The answer is always yes, obviously.
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
If you put intention into it being art, then it is
Yeah,
art.
if it is a thing that a human being created, it's art.
It can be art. I think it requires some degree of either intent from the audience or intent from the creator.
Yeah, but
And-
if we're talking again, a video essay is like a creative thing, which even the most like dry academic video essay is like you have had to sit and research it, write it, film it, record it, edit it. You have put in so much work to creating this thing. That's art.
Oh, absolutely. I just mean like if I make hot chocolate, it's not necessarily art. You know what I mean? Like I might have just thrown some stuff in my cup and I'm not thinking.
It could be some
But
real
it
good hot
can
chocolate.
be. But it can be art, and I think art is more about the doing and the moment, like, and the moment that the audience is having with the art object is what makes it art. And if you are having an artistic experience with a video essay, then it is art. And the number of people
and
that have
that's definitely
responses
how I approach my videos is as art, and I know that's very much how you approach yours, Aranok.
But I think part of that is asserting that it's art just by the doing. And when we cite other video essays as works of art, the same as films and video games and academic articles and paintings, it is the asserting, it is the doing which shows that. And I think
And art
people are scared
always
to
builds
cite.
on top of other art.
Yeah. And that's
nothing's
what more
created in a
people
vacuum.
that's what more people need to embrace, need to accept that. So this whole art thing, right? I actually struggled.
This whole art thing.
That's such a good start. So
art
this
thing.
whole art thing.
Yeah,
That's like
What's that
the
about?
disappointed parent finding out what you've just chosen for your degree.
So I've actually like struggled with this a bit, with this mentality myself, that like, because the things I make are like on a bit on the sillier side sometimes, and just I've been finding myself with the desire recently to make videos that hit harder. I don't know how to call
no,
it.
I think that's a good
Video,
description.
yeah, videos that feel more important, so to speak. And I think I've actually succeeded. I feel very proud of
I'd agree.
I feel very proud of my recent works, the Bennett Foddy video and art and numbers, which that video I will be referencing it a lot throughout this podcast because it's just going to be so relevant to things we talk about. But so it's something that I thought a lot about, how what I make is art and how it can benefit from the art of others, and that's why I wanted to be so open and honest about how basically my video and David's essentially come to the same conclusion through different means, and for David the absurdism in getting over it is just like a setup for the further. It's just like in the beginning of the video as a bit of setup, but for my video it's this whole arcing conclusion about where Bennett Foddy's design philosophy leads. So just be honest about it and show that, like, someone who watched both videos would probably, like, recognize the similarities anyway. But, like, just say, hey, this video does the same thing. It inspired this part of the video. It goes into further detail on this idea, or
I knew in advance before watching it that your video was going to have that mention of me, and that it was going to like draw some ideas from mine because you told me like even before you started writing it, David, I'm going to steal yours.
Yeah. And also telling people that you're going to do it can work too. Like
Yeah.
just be honest and
Or you could
embrace the
surprise them.
fact. Yeah. That can work too. Be honest and embrace the fact that you will use other people's art to improve yours.
That was a joke, by the way. You should
it's
probably.
a conversation.
That's so much of what a video essay is, at least in the terms of what we do on YouTube. Anyway, it's like if you're making an art analysis video essay, you are inherently building on someone else's work.
And on that note, by the way, something I will say is that it is I want someone to reference my video really badly. Like, please.
Which one? Don't cry. I'll do it for you. Which one?
Like, please reference
Which one?
my. Actually, Aronok mentioned that you might reference a script I'm. The Danganronpa script.
Yeah,
but
it depends. We'll see, because we're so late in the process with
Yeah.
the Star Wars video. But the Danganronpa one, the things that you express in there hit on elements that Jesse and I already discussed with, like, the narratives we use to tell stories being ideological.
Yeah.
In your case, you're talking about the way that Mr. Beast creates narratives, and
Oh boy.
it's good. It's a really good essay, and I'm really excited for you to release it. I think it's a powerful one. And like I just recorded, like, literally, not yesterday, but the day before, Turp and I recorded a video about Jubilee.
Yeah, you were telling me.
Which is an unscripted one, but there's some banger lines in there. It's it's both of us harping a lot on why Jubilee is fundamentally centrist, why it expresses an ideological view by framing things in the way that it does, how it profits off of marginalized experiences, which, as a trans person, and for Turb as a black man, when the primary things that Jubilee profits off of sensationalizing is race and racism and trans people and fucking trans panic, really. They're profiting off of trans panic. That has an effect on us. But the other thing that we focused on there as well was just that it's a conversation. And you can have productive conversations with different views and disagreements and things. Era just did an interesting video on that. I don't agree with every single point in it. And Era and I had an interesting conversation in our DMs that I'm never going to talk about publicly beyond just saying that. But like, the issue is that you can have these disagreements and you can have these conversations and things, but you need to be able to have them with some understanding of, like, other people's humanity, for example, and stuff like that. But I think all art is conversational. It is in conversation with our lives, our experiences, and what we bring to it. And I'm not just talking about the creation of art. I'm talking about the engagement with art. I don't think art is something to be consumed. I think it's something to engage with. And I think our culture of consuming art rather than engaging with art is part of what leads to, this is a really fucking clever segue,
I was about to do it.
Shit like theory channels. Because I think theory channels are fundamentally not about engaging with art, but rather about trying to consume it as some sort of logic puzzle to solve.
Yeah. Basically, the thing I found with theory videos, the ones I found, is that all they're interested in is not what the text is saying and, like, what is the emotions it leaves you with, what is, like, the politics of it. It's very much like, what are the things that factually happen in this story?
Yeah.
It's just so fun to take things literally.
Yeah, I mean that was a lot of the fun I had with this video. Was like, what's the most, like, ludicrous extreme I can draw from the world of Peanuts if I take it that, like, it's literal, that it's like this empty space and that they don't age for 50 years and all this stuff, and it just becomes this ridiculous thing, and it's fun to do.
Like, I want to be clear. I'm not shitting on people for having enjoyment from doing that. I just think that, like,
it's something I find unsatisfying in terms of watching, or I would not be satisfied in making.
Yeah, like it's like these sorts of theory videos are fun, and I can see why, they're a lot of fun. But as media analysis, they're very not satisfactory.
Yeah. And I think part of where my issue comes in as well is that there are some people who will watch those kind of videos and then not watch or not seek out anything else that lets them engage with media. They'll only. And it leads to them viewing all media in the same. It's a similar thing to like the CinemaSins kind of thing, where it's like you're not engaging with the text; you're just kind of like listing stuff about the text.
Yeah,
and it's not really digging into the text in any sort of meaningful way. It is not building a reading. It is the like anti-engagement with the art.
Yeah,
where
and at its very worst, it's MatPat saying that the Empire in Star Wars were right. Where he cites several like texts from within the Star Wars universe that like the Empire wrote as evidence of why the Empire is better than the Republic.
No critical thinking.
Okay, so basically you're saying that you used this text by Hermann Goering to say why the Nazis were right. I get you. I understand.
No, it's oh man.
Yeah, and again, like everyone should watch Lady Night's video. The Holocaust is not a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
David's not wrong for making that comparison. It's Star Wars, which does a very messy job of making comparisons to that. That is the problem there. Yeah. But like, it's this thing where they take the text, not even in the text's own terms, but in their like, it must be like the lore must be solvable if we comb the lore archives. And one of the things that I find most frustrating with it is that when you say talk about the issues with the text in it mishandling representations of Marston's people or things like that, especially when there's sci-fi metaphors for bigotry, people will respond by arguing as if the lore is a thing that is just a factual existence and not something crafted by a person that exists.
And also that they'll say that, like the allegory for racism in Star Trek or whatever isn't actually an allegory for like real humans because look, this person is like black down one side of his face and white down the other. No people are like that. So,
but it even when they engage with as it is being an allegory, they're like, well, in the universe, there's good reasons, and I'm like, oh my god, you're missing the forest for the trees, babe. Just and it's that same thing of like saying that the Empire is good because the Empire says it's good. I'm like,
but basically it's saying that the Empire is good because the trains run on time. The space trains run on time.
Oh, people need to watch the cabaret video. David's cabaret video. But no, it really it frustrates me at a core level really because I'm like, engage with what it means to you. Like, engage with the feelings that it's expressing. And I think the other way there that I hate about that type of engagement is an inability to engage with works of art that like deviate from the past lore to say something. And rather than trying to engage with, they are purposefully saying something by deviating from this, it's bad because it breaks the rules.
Yeah.
And there's something interesting to be said about how this sort of the popularization of this sort of theory videos and analysis, so to speak, goes like full circle and influences the art it's supposed to analyze too.
Yeah,
because then you'll have stuff like people making art to be solved in this way.
What's that game? Was it Hello Neighbor?
Like bait it?
The Hello Neighbor guy who like spent. He was like every now and then would just like put out a tweet going, "I can't wait for MatPat to try and solve this." And MatPat never did.
Didn't even
it's like
the tweets.
It's such an obnoxious like art thing, but it negatively impacts art. I think you see this a little bit with like the Last of Us TV show where because they were so mad at us, that type of fan, they purposefully include things in the finale. I'm not going to talk about the details because it's spoilers for both the game and the series, but like to try and explain stuff because people were having big, were whining about some of the premise and stuff because, it doesn't make logical sense, whatever. And it's like, again, not being able to engage with, like, the work is trying to say something by including this. It is not trying to be scientifically factual.
Yeah.
There's cordyceps people monsters. Like, I don't think it's trying to be realistic here, babes. It's trying to say something, and it is a plot contrivance, but you know what it is? It's an inability to engage with art as being art and not as, like, a history text. Like...
Yeah, and it leads to, like, again, there's so many. I would point to, like, the Marvel movies as being very good examples of this, where they deliberately try and write it to avoid looking like they have plot holes, and in doing so, just have characters be really obnoxiously explaining stuff that they don't need to, and things like that.
Marvel is just
that they sure are motion pictures that exist.
Here's
the thing.
I hate that I like certain MCU.
Oh, I have enjoyed MCU properties. I mean, you know what happened when I watched Moon Knight, so...
Yeah.
You know that both of us are obsessed with Moon Knight, David, but...
Yeah.
What fascinates me about the Marvel movies is that it's, to me...
They're still making them.
Yeah, they're still making them, for one thing, but, like... I haven't seen any other piece of media where people are so protective over spoilers than Marvel movies.
Yeah.
And I find that very weird. Because...
I find, like, the stuff about spoilers strange in general. I get to a certain degree if, like, you don't want to have something interesting in a movie, like, you don't want to know about a twist before it happens.
Yeah, but why Marvel?
Fair enough, but at the same time, if the movie that you're watching would be, like, ruined by knowing the twist in advance, then it's not a very good movie.
Yeah.
That's exactly my view of these pieces of art. Like,
I recently, when I saw John Wick 4 at the cinema, I looked up to see if there was an end credit scene and saw what happens at the end of the movie. I won't spoil it, but I saw what happens at the end of the movie right before I was like, as I was in the audience with it about to start, and it was like, but the movie was still really good, and it was like the thing that I had spoiled was built up to and foreshadowed throughout the whole movie. So it's like I would have guessed it was coming anyway. So
wow, almost as if it has like cinematic artistry leading to it.
It's
people have hit
movie.
A point where they think that foreshadowing is bad, and it makes me really annoyed. I'm going to be very direct. I'm going to use a famous twist film. Okay, Fight Club. A great film, commonly misunderstood. Anyway, when I first watched it when I was 11, I figured out the twist because there is obvious foreshadowing throughout the film if you pay attention to the art. Because it is a good piece of art, and it wants you to figure it out because you should be able to watch the art again and still get valuable meaning from it, even if you know the twist. Like, if the only value of your art is I've tricked the audience, it is... There's so many works like that nowadays where you watch it once and there's no value in rewatching it. And I'm like, that kind of defeats the...
I think that there's a thing with certain TV shows, particularly, where they'll have something set up that they'll need to pay off in like season 3 or 4 or something, but people guess it during season 1, and so they suddenly change tracks to make it something different, so it's still a reveal. And I think it was George R. R. Martin had a quote about that where he was saying that, if I'm writing a whodunit story and I've set it up the whole way through and foreshadowed that the butler did it, but then at the last second I reveal that the maid did it, that's not a satisfying story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like if I'd figured it out, I would feel good.
Yeah, you feel good if you figure it out. But like that's just good conveyance. Like that's good conveyance. And the other thing too is that like if you can't establish the information well, then it's not going to do anything. Good mystery things that manages to pull off something like that does something where it makes it plausible that multiple people could have done it. Look at the Knives Out franchise. They're very fun films. They're very good. And, like, they play a lot with these things and stuff, but they're enjoyable on a second watch because it's not built around a twist. It's built around solid storytelling with clear themes and meanings, which you can engage with. And that's why a lot of people have re-engaged with these films multiple times.
The Knives Out movies in particular really hold up to a second viewing because of how much stuff that is put in there early on that you won't realize is being set up until after you already know what the answer is. Then you go, oh, that bit from before, and then you go back and watch it again and you go, oh, they actually said it right here.
Yeah, and
There's films that are... Oh, sorry.
You can realize, you can, like, notice them in the first viewing, too. If you're, like, really... If you
go and actively trying to engage with the art.
But it can take on a new meaning when you see it a second time, which is fantastic.
If you realize that "imbreviate" is not a word.
Yeah, like it's all these little, but it's like it's about good quality of storytelling with lots of information and meaning and things in it, which you can gain more from every single time you engage with the work of art. And I've actually found that certain twist films, you're going to have a great time first viewing it if you know the twist, because then you're going to see all that stuff on the first time. It actually won't negatively affect
my mom actively
experience.
spoils media for herself. She she does that. She will not watch something if she doesn't know what happens in the end. Like that's
amazing.
Like,
I love that. I think that's brilliant.
Like that's how I'm gonna tell her. I'm gonna tell her, Mom, we should watch this movie, and she'll ask what happens in the end.
That's amazing.
She does that, like,
and I think that's
it's
valid,
just amazing.
Especially because, like, if you have certain triggers or anxieties or things, like, it can be useful to know what's coming. So you're not going to deal with certain things.
Very helpful website, doesthedogdie.com.
Yeah, which is
so useful for, if you've got a particular trigger for a trauma or something like that, you can look up and I think it'll just say like yes or no, and then you can kind of click to see a more expanded explanation if you want to.
Yeah. I don't think
that's like a good presentation of it as well.
Things lately, so.
Which is also why I've moved away from really caring about giving spoiler warnings on videos. I will give a minor one for videos where the person's not going to know going in that I'm covering that work of art. But like, I think they're kind of silly. Personally,
I don't give spoiler warnings on my videos because very much my theory is if I am talking about and analysing a specific film, then you should come in already expecting me to be talking about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Even from like a pragmatic point of view, people click off of spoiler warnings pretty fast.
Yeah.
And most people won't really care.
For Queer Relativity, I threw them up for like maybe a second before chapters, and I'm like, someone who gives a shit about that will check it. Like, and good for them. That's cool. But like, I really just think that people need to start engaging with art beyond just like
what literally happens.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think all of us try to do through our videos, to in different ways and in different degrees. Is we're all very much interested in what is the art saying to me, and what can I use it to say to other people.
Yeah, and I think also trying to get people to do that themselves, to engage with the art, with the art that we're making, and apply their meanings and things. To quote my most recent,
also part of why I sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
But part of why I don't really have one specific thing that my channel is on is that like I try to examine a lot of different kinds of art because that's how I learn more stuff. It's always good to engage with as wide a variety of things as you can, from as wide a variety of voices as you can, because that will have different emotions on you, and then you will be able to teach people about that, and also it'll let you kind of, if we're talking about marginalized voices, to say, if you read or watch a lot of work by, say, black authors, then that can let you point people in the direction of people who know a lot more about the subject than you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think this also gets to just like, if you're going to have marginalized people be part of your work, this is something we've all experienced. And I was just talking with David about something related to this earlier today. You should actually let them speak wild concept and not just throw them up on the screen for 3 seconds as like a throwaway cameo thing.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, you should send your script to them if they are willing to read it.
Yeah.
For sensitivity reading. That's the phrase.
No, I said
like with the cabaret video, I did I openly put out a call to people saying I would like people who are Jewish, who are from the Roma and traveller communities, people who are black, because I was talking about white supremacy and the Holocaust and things that, as a Gentile Gadger white person, do not affect me in the same way as they affect these people. And so to make sure that I am speaking respectfully and that I'm not misrepresenting things, and so that they can correct me or they can add extra context that I can then put into the script, it's just a very valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
And
David,
when I said include in, I was talking about a separate thing from feedback. You should always be getting sensitivity feedback from marginalized people if you're going to touch on any topic around it. But I just mean, like, if you're going to include them in the work, then like let them speak, let them say their own opinions, and let them have editorial control over what they're saying. Yeah, because that's important.
Really is.
Yeah. David, to circle back to your video a bit.
Yes, and the thing we came here to talk about.
Yeah, and and the conclusions therein. Something really interesting you talk about in the Peanuts video, which I want to discuss here briefly, is depth in children's media.
Yes.
And like artistic merit of children's media with Peanuts.
I've always found for a long time a lot of people tend to dismiss kids' media, and like, there's some of it that doesn't really say much. Like if you're talking about, say, like Peppa Pig or something, that's a baby show for babies. It's just meant to be like the very simple, like, here's how you count and be nice to people. Which even then there's still a political message in be nice to people.
Yeah. It's something that a lot of people have been talking about recently with the release of the Mario movie, I think. That there's people who are disappointed at the story of the Mario movie being like, kind of average.
But the Mario movie is very deep, isn't it? He goes underground.
Yeah.
Harry.
Yeah, that's how he goes to the Mushroom Kingdom. He plunges into hell and then finds a pipe and goes to.
He gets
if you wanted to, and I'm sure, I have no doubt someone will. You could make a very good analysis of the Mario movie and its actual themes and the emotions that it leaves you with, because it's a piece of art.
Yeah.
And while it may not, it's very much a modern day. A lot of modern day media tries to be apolitical in a way, and that's easier with a kids show or kids movie. But there is still always some level of politics to it. You can always read something into it.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, right? I can understand the reaction of it's a kids movie, and stuff, but it feels dismissive. It feels.
It says that it's a lesser form of art, and the reality is there's a lot of mature art, Family Guy, South Park, etc., that frankly has far less depth than a work like The Owl House or She-Ra or
Peanuts.
Or Peanuts. Where I think that the issue is that people see it as being made for kids rather than art that can be that can be engaged with by kids. Those are two very different things. Princess Bride, I would argue, isn't a film made for little children and only them as an audience. It is a work of art that kids can watch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of depth in it that exists beyond just what the kid was going to get.
Yeah, and there's a thing that, again, because it's made for kids, a lot of people tend to dismiss it because basically, if they are not the target audience, then people will often just go like, it's not worthwhile. And it's like, but kids' media is so worthwhile because if kids don't watch good media and don't engage with stuff on like an emotional level, then what the hell kind of person are they going to grow up to become?
If all your kids ever interact with is, what was the terrible show when I was a kid? Stuff like Boobas or whatever. And then they graduate from that to Family Guy.
Yeah, you didn't get a lot of political knowledge out of the Oogie Loves Big Balloon Adventure.
Yeah, and if they go from that stuff to Family Guy, which is what a lot of kids go from, and that's all they ever watch is these like. I'm not saying they're devoid of artistic value or anything, but just I think they're kind of slop.
Talk your shit. Talk your shit.
Keep going.
I think that there's the kind of the urge amongst like particularly like, kids who are like kind of entering their teenage years and like early teens to find stuff that's kind of edgy? And stuff like Family Guy and South Park, because it's a cartoon that's also edgy, draws a lot of people. Like I watched South Park way before I was old enough to do it when I was a kid. And like didn't get a lot of it, but thought it was hilarious that they said the swear words all the time. And
I think it's like if you don't give good art to kids, how will you teach them media literacy? How will you teach them to engage with art as a meaningful, deep thing that affects them emotionally?
And even then, just sort of simple things like what kind of sense of humor will they develop if they don't watch? Like again, I will say a huge part of my sense of humor generally comes from having read Peanuts as a kid. Which again, Peanuts, the comic strip, not exclusively aimed like kids. Obviously, kids can read it. There's nothing like in there that's too much for them. But like, it was much more aimed at like university age young adults. So it was like people in their like late teens, early 20s.
And you cite a thing that shows that it was the primary audience, at least in certain periods of history.
I didn't have any specific kind of citation for that, but like generally understood because little kids don't buy newspapers.
Yeah.
No, but I swear you had something in there. I can't remember.
Also, David, would you say that Peanuts has a dark sense of humor?
In a lot of places, yeah. I mean, so much of the humor of it is drawn from Charlie Brown is really sad.
Yeah.
Charlie Brown has like clinical depression. It's half the
Yeah, and everyone bullies him, and like he can never catch a break. But that's also what led me to what leads me to find it such a hopeful text, and what the overall message of the video is one of hope. Is because much as Charlie Brown is always sad and always suffers, and nothing ever goes his way, he never once gives up. There is never a moment where Charlie Brown doesn't stop trying.
I've seen a tweet recently that was like, we need more adult characters that are optimists. And I was like, oh my god, that's like really, really true. Because
I think we have a culture of cynicism right now.
Yeah. Like, okay, so that's what bothers me. The thing that bothers me a lot about this kids media discussion is when you realize what makes something not kids media. Because people will mistake maturity, people will mistake edge for maturity, or cynicism for honesty.
Yeah.
And
that's something I, again, talked about to a degree in the video is, again, when people make kind of, what I draw a lot of attention was like the adult parodies of Peanuts.
Yeah.
And when, I want to be clear, when I say adult, I mean like dark and edgy. I don't mean porn. Because if there was one thing I actively, as much as I watched as much Peanuts media as I could, I didn't look up to see if there was Peanuts porn because those characters are 8 years old.
Yeah.
Ooh, and it definitely exists. Like
I have no
Rule
doubt,
34
but
applies.
I have no doubt, but I did not want that in my internet history. Thank you very much.
Or
that's
in your
awful.
brain.
No.
Ugh.
But there was one text in particular I drew a lot of attention to. In fact, I have it right next to me here because I haven't cleaned up my room. But it's the Dog Sees God: Confessions of a Teenage Blockhead. Unauthorized play about the Peanuts, the Peanuts characters as teenagers, and it's just awful. And the characters are horrible, and it's super cynical, but then tries to be really earnest at the end without earning it.
It's a hateful work of art. Like
Yeah.
everything you told me about it, just and
Yeah,
David read me some bits from it that are not in the video that are.
It's just not good.
Yeah.
Upsetting.
That's you being very nice, David.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
my
to
goodness.
me, it was just kind of the epitome of this kind of thing, where it's like if you take this thing that is considered to be like not deep because it's largely recognized as children's media, or it's like in this case it's about children specifically, and trying to make it into something more adult and edgier and darker, and just losing everything that makes it good.
Oh, and also,
Yeah.
I would say half the time it ends up being less mature. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
it
think
becomes
Edge
immature because
makes things more juvenile if
yeah, it's like Peanuts is quite a mature strip in that it's dealing with quite real things. It's like children are sad and don't know why sometimes. Sometimes brothers and sisters do fight. Sometimes you do really like someone and they have no idea you exist, or all these things. And that's deep, real stuff that people can connect to. But when you make it just a joke of, haha, Charlie Brown said the F word, then it's like, what's that? What's that even?
and the thing is that and I've experienced this a lot because I worked as a coach for a decade. So I've worked and I've worked with people of all ages, but I've worked a lot with teens and kids and things, and kids know way more than a lot of their parents think they do. And they'll come and tell you shit or say shit, and you're like, oh, great, cool. And I can tell that you're talking because parents sometimes create and not all parents, obviously. I would say my parents didn't, but they create these environments where kids don't feel comfortable talking about heavy topics because that's not for them. And the reality is that your kid will encounter death, right? And if you can't have art that is accessible to them, that can deal with those themes and things, they're going to have a hard time because they don't have any framework to deal with that happening.
That's like me playing Persona.
Nowadays-
That's like me playing
nowadays
Persona
particularly-
3 at age 11, and just dealing with the consequences of that.
And I think nowadays, particularly, there's the added thing of kids have access to the internet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if they aren't given art or even just a conversation with an adult that can kind of help them prepare for certain topics, then they're going to find out about it in the worst way possible by Googling it.
The other thing too is if you don't train kids, you leave them vulnerable. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable, the reality that kids should be taught sex ed, certain forms of sex ed, depends on the age and everything, but from a pretty young age. And it always shocked me learning how late in life kids in the US do sex ed, because we start with basic stuff mostly around what does puberty do to your body, here's what a body is, here's how pregnancy functions, just very mechanical biologicals. We started doing that when I was 7, right? Zero negative effect. And sex ed actually lowers the likelihood of kids getting into dangerous situations because they're more prepared. They have a better understanding. They can know that something's not okay if you teach them.
And I think part of it's the extension of there are so many people who don't view kids as actual people. They basically view them as an accessory or an extension of themselves.
Or an object.
Yeah. And obviously, not everyone. Like, there are plenty of good parents out there who actually will engage with their kids properly, but there are some who won't, and so those kids become less prepared because then, when their parents find out that they've learned something they didn't think they should learn, then the kid will be punished for having learned a thing, and it's no good.
And to jump off of that to, like, you know, recent events and things with, like, legislative control. And I know that you've dealt a lot with this with the UK, and I know the UK has tried to return to this at certain times. We've dealt with it at times in Canada. It's very actively happening in the US, is the idea that queerness cannot exist in front of children, that it's too mature.
Yeah.
And
In fact, I had
For
a
the kids.
comment. I had a comment on this video because in the video I talk about how Peppermint Patty and Marcy are often read as queer characters, and I had a comment being very mad that I described an 8-year-old as queer, and
it's
and again it's like, you know, you would have a point about me not like projecting and like assuming the sexuality or gender of a child if it weren't a fictional character that is a drawing.
Well, and also, I was an 8-year-old kid. I knew I was queer before then, and I dealt with severe violence and bullying and harassing and things because I didn't have a framework to understand my queerness. Because
and you'll also notice that the person mad at me saying that Peppermint Patty and Marcy are queer didn't have any problems at all with me saying that Charlie Brown is in love with the little red-haired girl or Lucy is in love with Schroeder.
Yeah,
interesting, that, isn't it?
It's almost like the same people, and I talked about this in the Alice video, and I talked about like gender reveal party nonsense in the way that they'll be like, they'll dress their kids up and stuff like, oh, he's gonna be a ladies' man, and it's like a baby. Like, I'm not even talking about I'm talking about like a 3-month-old.
Like when they put two babies together and go, oh, they're gonna be married when they get older, and it's like,
that's gross.
Like, one.
That to me, that's way grosser than there was lesbians in that TV show. Because here's the reality: like, you're gonna encounter queer people in the world, and if you don't normalize to kids that these are just normal people that exist, well, like, kids are taught and have a leniency towards like punishing people that are abnormal, and so it creates the space for things like what I experienced as a kid, because I went to a Catholic school and it was very not normalized. It was very taboo. You were not allowed to be like that. And so any kid that was deemed like that was treated horrendously. And I even by the staff. So I think that like what David does with the Peanuts video is so important, because it expresses that like kids media is perhaps some of the most important to have real conversations about in a societal context, because it's the media that everyone is likely to interact with to some degree. And
and growing up with a piece of media is a powerful thing. Like, it will have a lot of influence over you.
Yeah.
And whether you realize it or not, it's just, that's why if there's any like thing to, if you come out of this podcast understanding some new things, it's how friggin' important media literacy and and just engaging with art is.
That's a bit. Media literacy, engage with art, and engage with as wide a variety of art from as wide a variety of voices as you can.
Yeah.
Engage with marginalized art, and if you have kids, look for art which is accessible to them, but is written thoughtfully and carefully, that engages with marginalized experiences and things. And there's plenty of great artists that have written things that
more
are
than ever.
Yeah, and like I've talked about this in my work, but like it's something that David and I have talked about a lot because of me working on stuff and us giving each other feedback and things. Because us giving each other feedback goes well back before I did Tron Legacy. Actually, I think it might go back before I started even writing essays.
No, I think it was when you were working on Alice and I was working on Godzilla.
Yeah, where we really started doing that stuff.
Yeah,
but like,
and that was around the time that we ended up like half our videos were like, how have we ended up from completely different like thought processes.
like-
Come to videos that are about the same things.
Oh, it keeps happening by accident. But like with the Alice video and things, is that like when we're kids, as queer kids, we're so desperate to see ourselves into things that we read ourselves into stuff, and we learn to do that stuff. I think it's why a lot of queer people are good at applying media lenses to things. Not all queer people, obviously, but it's because like we had to be able to engage with certain aspects of art and things and understand ourselves. And
that was something I think, drawing on from you saying that, led to me talking about that a bit in my Sherlock Holmes video.
exactly.
And how and again I did in that one. So if you want to see like a bigger conversation about reading yourself into art where there is none, then check out Aronok's video, because that's just a thing you can do. It's so easy.
Yeah. And again, it's that thing of it's conversation, and have conversations with your kids about the art they watch.
I did
watch art with
recently, by the way. My sister has a son. He's 11 years old now.
Cute.
And I check on him very frequently to see what he watches. Out of interest. Like I walked into his room like yesterday, and he was watching chess memes.
Apparently this is a thing. Like kids are really into chess right now.
Yeah, kids are really into chess right now, and like
that's
dope.
And like,
because chess is really good for cognition. Anyway,
and like
I got made fun of for liking chess when I was a kid.
and he told me that it was something his friend at school recommended, and now he's really into chess. So
tell you to Google en
awesome.
passant.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I did have a long conversation with him recently about a bunch of stuff, and how to and to be careful about the things he watches, because I don't want him to get alt-right pipelined.
yeah.
That's my biggest fear, and I told it to my sister, and she was like, talk to him. And like have this conversation with him, and I did.
And I'm glad he has you there for that. And
yeah.
I think as well, if you talk to your kids about the media that they watch, then that is a positive memory they will have of you.
Oh, it is. And
to bring it back to the sad place for a moment, but when we had my mum's funeral in February, one of the things that was mentioned in the kind of the service that was just kind of a celebration of my mum's life was that through having me and my two siblings, there was that my mum became extremely knowledgeable about wrestling, superheroes, and Pokemon.
That's great.
And I just love that, but especially it was texted the really funny thing, where in the original draft of the thing she wrote, the celebrant wrote that she became quite adept at wrestling superheroes, Pokemon, and just the image of my mum being adept at wrestling is so funny. Here's mum with a steel chair.
Mrs. Bradley coming in with a steel chair. No, but like I think, I watched a lot of mature media when I was a young kid, and a lot of that was just like my parents were very. So my parents looked after a lot of my cousins, a lot of my like our family friends' kids and stuff, and it was very much a thing of like different kids are ready for different things at different times. But the thing is that my dad and my mom would have conversations with me about those works of media and stuff. So like when I read Game of Thrones for the first time, I think it was like 10 or 11, which I know a bunch of people in the audience probably were like, what the fuck? But like, no, because but like we had conversations about the themes of the meeting and the elements of it that are very, complex and mature and things. I distinctly remember being 11 or 12. I have very bad memory of my childhood, but like I remember moments really strongly, and strong memories I can like very perfectly discern. But watching Starship Troopers with my dad, we were in Jamaica for a family member's wedding. Some of my family's from Jamaica. We were in Jamaica for a family wedding, and we watched Starship Troopers that night. My dad would just ask me like semi-leading questions about it to see if I was understanding the text, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a satire of fascism. But the only way that you get to an understanding of that at that young of an age is if you've been allowed to understand history. You've been allowed to have a real, like, education in engaging with works of media and stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
I think some people are always like, oh, wow, you have, like, really good media analysis things. And it's like, it's not because I'm some naturally amazing person. It's because I've been doing it since I was a little kid.
Yeah, it's not an like media analysis, and this is the secret that the YouTube video essayists don't want you to know. But it's not a natural born talent that you are born with. It is a skill that you learn and get better at,
and practice. You have to do it consciously.
Yeah, again, you got to consciously. You got to, and again, that's where watching as wide variety of media, or like engaging, playing. If it's like video games, play games from all sorts of different creators. If it's books, read from all sorts of different authors. If it's movies, watch from all sorts of different places in the world.
Yeah, I am very bad at media literacy for books and movies. I miss a lot of things.
I'm getting better at it. Again, it's a constant process, I think, because it's. Again, for me, in terms of books, when I was growing up, particularly when I was like a teenager and like early 20s, I read a lot from the same few authors who were, surprise, surprise, straight white men. And only in more recent years have I started to like really expand that and start reading books from more women, more people of colour, more queer authors. And it just like it opens you up to a whole new world of stories that you wouldn't have imagined before. And that's just so good.
Yeah.
No, and like, again, we keep coming back to this art as a conversation, and you learn from engaging with different works of art. But I think the other thing, too, is that, like, don't let someone's analysis be the be-all, end-all understanding of that work.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of my problem with the theory space, is that they present themselves as a be-all, end-all. This is what the meaning is, and it's not about the actual, like, what does this emotionally convey? What does this tell the audience? What does this say about the politics of the real world? What does this say about the author and the society they exist inside?
That's why I have the point in the video where I just yell, "This is the only truth," as the universe falls into a void.
Exactly.
By the way, David, I didn't realize I didn't realize that escaping the void was so easy. Apparently, all I have to do
you just snap out of it.
All I have to do is have a plastic Lucy voiced by Laura Crone tell me to snap out of it. Yeah. Why haven't I done that?
Who knows? Maybe you like it there. I don't know.
So to end this episode, I'd like to share a story that I remembered when we were talking about how kids will find out stuff even on their own and like share it with their parents. For when I did that, one day, when I was like very young, I must have been like 5 or 6 years old or something like that. I had this encyclopedia that I was getting like every month or so. It was like an educational encyclopedia, and it had a DVD with games on it that I really liked playing. I don't remember what it's called. And one of them had how kids are made, how children are born. And and I played that, and then I went to my mom, like while she was cooking or something, and I was like, "Mom, I have the forbidden knowledge. I know how kids are made." And she was like, "Oh, really? Cool. Tell me then." And I told her the whole shebang. I told her the whole process as it was explained to me. And in the end, she was like, "Oh, that's really cool. What you've just described, does it have anything to do with sex?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." Absolutely not. Next question.
That's funny. But
so that's just reminded me of the end. There's the movie Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Very, very fun kids movie. Very like superhero satire, doing a lot of fun stuff. At the very end of that movie, when they're trying to wrap it up, and Robin wants the movie to keep going and wants it to ask some like real questions, but like they're putting the credits on screen, so Robin just like zip lines up to the front of the screen, smashes it at the camera, and goes, kids, ask your parents where babies come from," and then the movie ends. That is so good.
Like, really, I think the reality is like you just have to be prepared for the reality that your kids are going to encounter shit, and either you can prepare them to understand the knowledge, or you can let them flounder and pretend like they won't encounter it. And like I just think about various works of art that like helped me in my childhood.
For me, my awakening was Persona 3, as I mentioned earlier. A game that starts and the first words you see are Memento Mori. Remember, you will die. Those are the first words.
Boy.
That's true.
Those are the first words you see when you start Persona 3, and I played it when I was 11, and it fucked me up. Because it's a game about death. And one of the characters in Persona 3 is a 10-year-old child. And you have to watch this kid in the game deal with death. And he was like the same age as me. And it's just it had a really big impact on me. That's just
had a big impact on me, and I played it like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, man,
it's amazing. Anyway, Persona 3 is one of the greatest games ever made. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this episode of Video Gems. Thanks for listening / watching. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify. Leave a review. Do all the podcast and YouTube-y things. And Patreon.com/darkfry. Support the channel there. And for those that do, there'll be a bonus episode. A special bonus episode as well. So
good heavens.
Good heavens.
Oh, good heavens.
So much content. So much knowledge. That's what it is. It's good. Thank you all for listening. See you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.